Hello, friends and neighbors. Let's talk about bringing our fight into the right focus.
Welcome to A Word for Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us. Each Wednesday, you will find Boggs Family Ministries is here with our host, Davy Boggs. Having you along with us is a wonderful addition. Now, let's enjoy together A Word for Wednesday.
Thank you, Brother Devin, and thank you for joining us on A Word for Wednesday. I'm back in my study at the Lazy Odie Ranch, and we're glad to be here. We're home a few days earlier than what we had planned, and we have rescheduled next week's meeting. I'm still dealing with issues with my generator on the bus. We're not sure if it's the generator, the inverters, some combination of the two, or something completely else. It's a very complicated system, something that very few people, even experts on generators, evidently understand, because it's the system that the converter of our bus used. Hardly anybody else uses that configuration, so it's very little known and understood. So we're having problems with that, and we're dealing with it. And then Kelly needs a physical touch. Odie needs a physical touch. I still need a physical touch in my body. My lungs need to be healed. Whatever else this is, I really need a healing. We have family that are sick and afflicted and need to be healed. I just now received a call from Brother Shabanke in Nigeria, and there are many, many needs there that weigh on me heavily, probably as much as the needs that I have just mentioned to you, and other friends that need prayer, need help so much. You know, it is so easy to get focused, for me, on these natural things. You know, a bus problem, whether it's a tire, generator, motor, alternator, water problem, plumbing problem, whatever it is, air conditioning, it's a natural problem. Very rarely is that problem spiritual. I have a car problem. I have a physical problem in my body. Very rarely is that a spiritual problem. It can be a result of a spiritual attack or spiritual misstep even, but most of the time we're just dealing with machinery that breaks, bodies that break, things that wear out, stuff. But it takes up so much of our attention, or at least it does me. I've told you before, my brother Steve diagnosed me with bus-induced psychosis, and that's probably very close. And I don't mean to make fun of anybody suffering from psychosis, but that's probably pretty close to where I live. Bus-induced psychosis. My mind is taken up so much with things that are physical, things that are natural. And if you want to say it like this, things that are carnal. And I do not mean sinful. I just mean things that are flesh and blood, things that are steel and bone and wood and material and just minerals of the earth. So much of my time, and if I'm not careful, so much of my spiritual time, my prayer, my meditation, and then my worry, my mind, the resource. You know, I only have so much resources in this big fat head. Look like I'd be so abundantly blessed, but there's only so much in there. And I can only access, they say, just a small little minute part of it. And I'm using those resources on things and stuff and situations that matter. Yes, they matter. Yes, they are important to me and to people I love, but they're not eternal. They're things that are temporal and not eternal. I often turn to the book of Ephesians when Paul is talking probably from Rome, probably from confinement. He's not allowed to leave. He's there against his will, yet he's there according to God's will. But Paul's not a free man. He's writing from Rome to the Ephesians, and he makes this statement, finally, my brethren, at the end of this letter, and this is in the last chapter, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. And I will apply that exhortation to Davy, and Davy needs it. I need it. Davy, be strong, son. Be strong in your mind. You can do this. You can fix this. You can remedy this. You can be strong, boy. You can do something about this. In the power of God's might, you can prevail in these temporal, natural things. Put on the whole armor of God, he said, that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Man, that flat tire must have been an attack of the enemy. The fuel injection system failing must have been an attack of the enemy. That leak in your roof, that credit card that failed, the check that bounced, the cash that disappeared, had to be an attack of the enemy. Or it might have just been natural, temporal stuff. I've often used this statement, and probably I have right here before. You know, I've had a lot of flat tires on my way to revivals and on my way to church and on my way to camp meeting and on my way to work. And I've said, that devil put a flat tire, put a nail in my tire. That old devil fighting me, trying to keep me from getting to revival. And most of the time it's because I was trying to get 80,000 miles out of a 40,000 mile tire. Years ago, I put a lot of used tires on my vehicles because I couldn't afford new tires. There was a man in Waynesville, Corwin there, Mr. Cook, had a little tire shop in his garage out next to his house. He sold new tires, but he kept people's tires when they took them off, and he kept them for people like me and probably a lot of other ones. And I'd come in, I'd say, man, I really need a size 14 whatever tire, 15 or 16. And I don't know if he ever said to me, yeah, boy, I got this brand new one here. I'll get you 4 of them. I don't think he ever said that to me. He knew I couldn't afford it. He knew why I was there. He'd go around to the back there, or maybe in the back of the garage, and he'd say, I think I got just what you need. I had a good set. He said, why don't we just put 2 of them on? And he'd sell them to me for $4 or $5, $2 or $3. And then have his guys put them on for me. Balance them. Because that's all I could afford. And he was a great guy. And so I wasn't just trying to get 80,000 miles out of a 40,000 mile tire that I bought new. I'm trying to get 80,000 miles out of a used tire that somebody else said was already wore out enough to replace. And so I'm not so sure it was the devil all those times. One time I said to Brother Benny, I've told you this, my pastor, I said to him, because I'd had a breakdown in my old 84 Plymouth Reliant station wagon that was way wore out when I bought it. And I'd had a breakdown I couldn't even get out of town. I was trying to get to Texas to preach revival. And I was sitting on Brother Benny's porch, and I said, man, the devil's fighting me trying to get to Texas. And he kind of chuckled at me. And that got my attention a little bit. I wasn't really happy that he was laughing at me. And he said, Davey, you really think you're that big a threat to the devil that he's just going to come down, fight your engine because he's afraid you're going to go out there and tear his little world up in Dallas, Texas, Fort Worth, Texas area? And he deflated my balloon. Really put my ego in check. Up till that point, and I was very young at that time, I probably thought I was a threat to the devil. So much that he fought every move. Every move I made, he was fighting. I don't know what everybody else was doing, because there's only one of him. There's He's got all these imps and stuff. There's only one devil, and he can't be everywhere at one time. And I thought he was spending all his time in Ohio fighting me. These are just things, stuff, hard things, difficult things, situations you are facing which are very difficult. How are you going to pay that bill? What are you going to do about that friendship? What are you going to do about what he said or what she said? How are you going to handle that situation at your job? How you know what your boss said? How it demands a response. How are you going to respond to it? You know what somebody said about your children, and you think, boy, that demands a response. What are you going to do about that? What are we going to do? What are you going to do about that leaking roof that you can't afford to fix? What are you going to do about the appliance that's gone bad and you really can't afford to replace it? And they're basically unfixable nowadays. They're made to use and throw away and get another. That's why they make them so light, so you can pick them up and toss them out. What are you going to do about that? The lawnmower, your grass is high. You can't afford to have somebody mow it, and you can't get the mower started. You can't get it to cut. What are we going to do about these real situations? Those tires. I think Mr. Cook is out of business. He's probably dead by now. What are you going to do about those tires, Davey? What are you going to do about those brakes, sir? What are you going to do about that stove, ma'am? Real world issues. But I don't think Paul was talking to us only about real world issues. I spend so much time thinking about and praying about and spouting off about real world issues that are only temporal. But Paul tells us in this passage, we're not wrestling against flesh and blood. We're this whole thing. I know we got problems. Paul had problems, remember? He's in prison. He's confined. He may be in a house, but he's confined. He's not allowed to leave till Nero tells him he can leave. He knows we got problems, but we are not wrestling against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. That's why we need the whole armor of God, that we may be able to withstand in the evil day. I don't need to stand against my house trouble, my bus trouble, my budget trouble. I've got to stand against spiritual things. It's a spiritual fight. I need to concentrate my prayer. Pray about all these other things, but concentrate my prayer against spiritual wickedness, against the devil, against the fight to make it spiritually. All these things are eternal. All these things are temporal, and I need God's help in them. Yes, I do. But I really want to win in eternal things. My dear brother, my dear sister, keep pressing on. Keep fighting on. But rather than focus on the temporal, let us focus on winning spiritually. I hear from so many of you that are praying for lost sons and daughters and husbands and wives and nieces and nephews and grandchildren. Keep struggling. That's what we're fighting for. We're fighting to save our families. We're fighting to save our neighbors. We're fighting to save humanity. If the dishwasher quits, I hate it, but we're fighting to save our soul and the souls of others. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. I hope that makes sense to you. As my dear friend, Brother Barry Gotro says, it makes sense when I say it to myself. Take on the whole armor that you may be able to stand. And having done all to stand, stand therefore. And I love that. Having done all to stand. I've really got some perseverance in some things. I've just bulldogged my way through some situations in life. What I need is a good dose of that spiritually, in my mind, in my spirit, in my heart, in my soul. I need a good dose of that. I'm going to hold on to God. I'm going to hold on to grace. I'm going to hold on to his power. I'm going to hold on to his strength. And having done all to stand, I'm going to stand therefore. Hallelujah. With the garments of God and the armor of God on me until I am a winner. Hallelujah. We're going to win by God's grace when we stand for right and fight against the right things. Maybe more on that later. Thank you for joining us. That's my word for Wednesday. God bless you, and I will see you next week.
That is our word for Wednesday. We are so glad that you've spent a few minutes with us today. If you've been touched by today's episode, please share it with your friends and family. We welcome your questions or comments below or by email. You can find the email address in the description, along with a link to Mile Markers, the website for Boggs Family Ministries. Also, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thank you again, and we hope to see you next Wednesday.
Ciao for now.